How to manage your stock as an e-commerce business is a really common thing that comes up when I get asked in my Ecom Blueprint community and my up-level mastermind programs, which are designed to help e-commerce brands hit their first 10, 20, and 50K month and beyond. And so this is off the back of my own experience co-founding an e-commerce business in 2013 with my brother. We left our corporate jobs, started a cold press juice cleansing company from scratch, and that business has since gone on to do multiple seven figures per year. So when it comes to managing stock, there's two real main things that come into it, especially in those really early stages of the business. The first is cash flow, okay? Where basically, especially if you're ordering from overseas or there's big upfront expenses, it makes it extremely challenging to get, say, economies of scale or have a lot of stock in a decent amount of time. So this is where people run into challenges, especially around, like big sales periods like Black Fridays and Christmas, is that they just don't have enough stock in time because of the forecasting they did, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago and the cash they actually had available in their pocket. So they're actually restricted by cash flow. So how we actually get around the cash flow as this first challenge is essentially budgeting, like very, very simply budgeting and funds allocation is what I call it. So at the end of each month, you've got your hopefully profit. Okay. Some people are, like neutral or some are even redlining at certain points in time. So this is why it's even more important that as you have profitable months, you actually allocate funds this way, is you basically have your end of month, let's call it profit or bank balance, and that you automatically, or you can do it manually, but mostly automatically allocate a portion of funds to your tax and BAS, let's call it, for, when you actually need it. And then also to your, call it stock fund or stock account, which basically means when you need to go and order stock, you've actually got some funds there available that you've been putting away every single month that hopefully is much more than is needed to order that next round of stock. So managing your cash flow is the first important thing that you do, because as you definitely grow and increase sales, firstly, your ordering will get more regular, more frequent, and also the amount of money that you need up front is going to increase because yes, you may be getting economies of scale, which is where you get a lower cost per unit. But to get the economies of scale, you need to order more, okay? So you might be having your first order that's $5,000 worth of stock. It might last you 3 months initially, and then you go and order in the next batch, $10,000 worth. You're going to get more units, okay? Maybe 3 times the amount of units at a better rate, but the actual outlay is not $5,000 anymore, it's $10,000. So your actual cash required is obviously a lot more. So conserving cash, saving it for stock is really, really important because we don't have to dip into our personal savings, for example, or just scratch around or miss opportunities to get things in time. The second part of it is actually timing. Okay, so again, this is probably the main part or the main question I actually get. The cash flow is actually secondary to this typically because they don't even really consider it. But it's really how do I manage my stock? Because what people soon find out if they have a product that does well and they sell, and when they sell out, whilst that sounds great and it's a great marketing tool to use, when you sell out of a product or your products, you're actually out of business. You can't sell anything, right? You might be able to pre-sell and things like that, but still you can't go at the velocity that you were going before to actually sell that product out or have the intent and intensity behind it. So selling out is a glorified success, let's call it, because you want to stay in business. You want to keep selling it, obviously, as long and as much as possible. So managing your stock is really important, especially if you're getting it from, your stock from overseas and things like that. Timeframes are a really important consideration. Typically from inquiry to production to get the stock on the water, through customs, everything like that, you're allowing at least 90 days, maybe sometimes 120 days. That's 3 to 4 months before you ordering it and when you actually need it. So it's really important that we are thinking this far ahead. And to be really honest with you, I didn't think like this. Most people I didn't speak to didn't think like this. And so we try and mitigate this risk or get people away from making this mistake. And people still make the mistake because it's so hard to think 3 months out or 4 months out, especially when you're coming into busy periods, right? So this is, I guess, a point to say you need to be thinking about it. First, you need to be saving for stock. It's going to come up. You're going to need it. You're probably going to need more money than what you think. And secondary is you're going to need more time than what you think. And so if you've ordered and you need it in 90 days, you've probably ordered too late already. You're going to be sitting around waiting. There's going to be issues in production. It's going to take longer to get on the water. It's going to take longer to get out of customs in Australia, okay, or wherever you're located. So you just really need to be prepared with this. And I guess dovetailed with that is it's also inconsistent because especially as you're growing, you're going to order 1,000 units here and then 2,000 units, then 5,000, 10,000. So cash flow is one that we obviously spoke about. But in terms of the forecasting, that's kind of the sticking point that people get into. Hence the beginning of this conversation, or the highlight of this advice is around how do we know how much to order and how frequently. Okay, so depending on how long you've been in business, if you've been in business for a while, you should still obviously be looking to grow, but it's going to be more consistent, more frequent. You have your fingers on the pulse a little bit more. But in that growth phase where you're literally like doubling sales in half the time each time, it's difficult to manage. And so there is a science to it. There's definitely mathematics that you can go and say, well, look, how much stock have I got? How long is that actually going to last me? And then what is that triggered date based on the number of units I've got that I actually going to need to reorder? So there's ratios in there, something we share in our paid programs for sure that you can go and actually work out. That's the science form. But typically what people find is it's a lot more of an art form as well. All right, know your numbers, know when you need to order, go ahead and actually do that. But then it's the art form as well of like, or how much do I order in anticipation for end of financial year, Black Friday, Christmas, etc. And so my advice around that would be, if it's a non-perishable, if you can have it sitting on the shelf for longer, I would always order more. Like I'm talking 25 to 50% more than what you think you need, because chances are you probably will need it. One, economies of scale, and B, obviously the consideration is cash flow for that additional stock. But it's going to pay dividends because you're going to have more stock for longer, and then you can do exactly the same thing each time. So that's kind of like that art form. You can scientifically calculate it, but the art form is, well, if I'm actually forecasting, that means I can push harder, I can push earlier, right? I can fill this void that I'm creating. So I talk about that quite a lot. When we order more stock than what we think we need at the time, I'm creating a void, like an unknown void of like, oh boy, like a bit of back against the wall type stuff, all right? But 9.5 times out of 10, I'd say almost close to 10 times out of 10, people have the intent to fill that void, right? Which means that they have to then go and sell it. They have to then go and do the marketing and do this and do whatever to actually make it move. And they do. They typically make it happen, meaning they sold way more stock on what they thought they would or had planned for, because they created that opportunity to do so. They had the stock and therefore they were able to get through. And I see people do this all the time. Like they always sell out faster of what they get, regardless if it's more or less of what they would need than what they think initially. But we underestimate how much we can actually sell through. Okay. Because the last thing we want to do, creating this void to fill it, the last thing we actually want to do is be hamstringing ourselves, holding ourselves back, right? And so if you have too little stock, if you're not ordering enough, you're always kind of like, oh, I got to pause my ads, or I shouldn't go as aggressive on this. Where if you've got way more stock than you think you may need, you're way more likely to go hard and go aggressive and start to build momentum and compound. And then you can order again and again and again and again. And you got some good cash flow coming through the door to be able to obviously fund that stock growth. All right. So that's just hopefully a bit of an eye opener in terms of managing stock. One is you have to consider cash flow. You have to have the cash available. Two is that you need to be able to use the scientific form of calculating how much you've got, how much you need when you need to reorder. And three is to be able to use the art form of how much more do I need? Can I back myself here? I should back myself here and get more to get the economies of scale. Again, considering the cash flow, but knowing I'm actually going to sell through it with the proper intent and strategy and momentum I'm actually building. Okay. So this is, again, it can be quite complex and it might be case by case, but that's what I've learned in 13 years experience working with hundreds of brands is you're way better to have the cash to allow you to get the economies of scale, to buy more stock, to create the void and then go and fill it. And you're going to scale and grow way faster, because the ones that don't do none of those things, they don't have enough cash, they don't order enough stock, they run out, right? And then they can't capitalize on great opportunities such as the sales periods, or then there's delays with Black Friday or Chinese New Year, or something happens and they can't get enough stock in time and suddenly they're out of business for 2-3 months at a time. It's painful and you don't want to be in that position. So I'm asking you to learn from my mistakes, learn from others' mistakes, and make sure you're on top of your stock management. It's kind of like a boring type topic, I'll be honest, but it really helps when it comes to being able to understand how much you need, understand how to manage your money, is understanding how your stock's going to flow through so that you can give yourself the best opportunity to grow and scale profitably, right? So look, I hope that was valuable for you. If it was, love a like, love a subscribe. Really, really value the people who watch my videos on this channel. I'm just trying to provide as much value as I can. If you want to know more about what we do, you can click on the link below, check it out, how we help e-commerce brands. But other than that, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.